Okay, so let's talk about considering the rhetorical situation. So, what do we mean by rhetorical? This phrase, rhetorical question, is probably very familiar to everybody. A rhetorical question is usually a question we ask that's not really a question, right? We ask the question, but not because we're actually inquiring, not because we're actually questioning. We ask in a question frame. We frame it as a question, but really it's like a kind of statement, right? That is not, that's sort of the way we often use rhetorical, the context we use it in. But rhetorical, the word, is much broader than that. In general, rhetorical means the ways in which the statements, the words we're using, the communication has an effect on the world. Rhetoric is the study of that effect of communication on the world. So when you use language, the language always has some kind of effect, right? So whether or not it's just the effect that other people hear you say something, that's an effect. Maybe you get somebody to do something, you persuade them to do something for you, or maybe you convince them of something. They didn't think something's true, and you just convinced them that it is true. So you had an effect on them with your language. So that's what we're getting at when we're talking about rhetoric. When we're talking about a rhetorical situation, then we're talking about the situation in which you're communicating and what kinds of effects you're looking to have on the world. So we ask ourselves a few questions when we are considering our rhetoric. Because anytime we communicate, we want to have effects. Otherwise, maybe we're not even communicating, right? But so as long as we want to have effects, we want to ask ourselves questions about rhetoric. So what are some questions we want to ask? So let's look at these examples of questions that help us determine what kind of rhetoric we're going to use. So first, what's the primary purpose of your writing? So maybe your purpose is to persuade. Maybe your purpose is to entertain. Maybe your purpose is to inform. All of those different purposes are going to change the way that you communicate, right? You're not going to try to be persuasive if you're just trying to entertain, and vice versa, right? So that purpose is always important. So if you're telling a story, that's one purpose. If you're doing a movie review, that's another purpose. If you're doing a research project, that's another purpose. If you're trying to make an argument, that's another purpose, right? Okay. What about audience? Who is the audience of your writing? So when we write, we're not just writing for ourselves, we're writing for someone else to read it. And same with speaking. We're speaking so somebody else hears us. And we're going to speak differently and write differently depending on who it is we're writing for and talking to. We're going to speak differently to a baby than to an adult. We're going to speak differently to our boss than to our employee and stuff like that, right? Next question, what genre will you write in? So genre is like the form of writing. So what are some different genres? There's fiction and nonfiction, right? Those are two broad genres. And then within those genres, we have like subgenres. So in fiction, we might have romance and thriller and mystery and science fiction and fantasy. and those kinds of distinctions. Depending on your purpose, you might change your genre. Maybe your purpose is to entertain, but you're trying to entertain an audience of people who like mysteries, so you're going to write in the form of a mystery, right? Okay, next question. What is your stance towards your topic? So stance is the position you're taking or the attitude you're taking. So maybe you have a positive attitude, maybe you have a negative attitude, maybe your attitude is more complex than that, more nuanced than that. Depending on what attitude you have, that's also going to change how you present your topic. So it's going to change things like your tone and your mood. It's going to change some of the details that you add and how you organize even. So if you're making an argument, for example, you're going to organize your content, the details of your argument, to support your main claim, your thesis, right? If you take the opposite thesis, you may organize it differently because you want to defend the opposite thing. So that's all related to what your attitude, what your stance is towards the topic. And then you can ask your medium and design. So what medium are you using and what are your design needs? So this relates to this concept of medium. So medium is what the communication is transmitted through. So when I'm speaking, the medium is my voice, right? And when I'm writing, the medium is the letters on the paper. You can also communicate through other mediums. So you can communicate over video, which is what I'm doing right now. And you can communicate through a bunch of other ways, right? When we talk about social media, those media are each platform is itself a type of medium that people are using to transmit communication through, right? Fundamentally, that's all they are. And then ask yourself, what are your design needs? So the design is the overall presentation of what you are communicating. So you could, one design might be you put your writing in an actual book. Another design might be it's a stack of papers that you staple or paperclip together. You could also write it on a Post-it note, and it's medium, but it's also you're designing the way that it's presented to your receiver. So when this is probably especially a good example that's especially obvious might be something like designing a poster for a presentation or a PowerPoint for a presentation. Every slide of the PowerPoint and every piece of the poster you might put special attention into how it looks for the person who's receiving it, right? So that's the design element. All right, so all of those things add up to how you're going to consider your rhetorical situation, how you're going to try to make effects on others through the way that you communicate.